G'day, I'm Yuki-san Dev, and in part 28 of this series, Unity for the Absolute Beginner, we will work on phase 4 of our second game. Alrighty, so we are continuing on from phase 3, where we set up the game manager to start managing things in hand with the spawner. And we had a few other bits and pieces in there too. And we did a little prepping for this phase, which is to create the enemy boss. So we will bring in the boss model and script it all ready to go. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm opening the project from where we left off in phase 3. Alrighty, so first off, let's get the model in. You should already have the wrap for it from the first video. The model is available on my GitHub link. So drag the diamondboss.fbx file into your project. Click on the file in the project and select Extract Materials. Accept the default path. And now drag the model into your hierarchy so we can see what we're doing. Now click on Base Colors material in your project and drag the diamond wrap outer into the albedo slot. The wrap should already be in your cube wraps folder under images in the project from phase 1 of the game. All of these files are available in my GitHub. And then set the albedo color to 9F, 9F, 9F. And turn metallic all the way up. And smoothness all the way down. Okay, now click on the diamond material and change its albedo color to 90 8C And let's enable emission and change the color to red 14, green 191, and blue 128. Now, of course, you can use any colors you like, but this is what I'm using for the diamond. It looks kind of diamondy. Alright, now you can drag the two materials into your materials folder and drag the diamond boss mesh into the meshes folder. Alright, now let's click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy and we'll make a tag for it. And we'll name it boss. And assign it to the boss. And let's just move this model up in the scene a little bit here for testing. Alrighty, now let's give it a rigid body. And set the gravity to off and the angular drag to 0. And let's also add a box collider and enable is trigger. Alrighty, so the base boss is pretty much done, so let's right click it and select Prefab and unpack. Now, one of the boss's abilities will be to spawn in little diamond minion bosses, so let's make one real quick. Copy the diamond boss that's in the hierarchy and paste another one and name it Diamond Boss Minion. Lock XYZ of scale and scale it down to 15. And you might want to move it out from the main boss so you can actually see it. So the minion will just use the enemy script that we already have, so drag the enemy script onto the Diamond Boss Minion. Now click on the minion and set your reward points and hits to kill. So I'm going to set my points to 2 and just requires 1 hit to kill it. Now if you were to run this right now, you would get an error because we haven't assigned any textures for this minion. And you remember in the enemy script there is a bit of code in there that automatically assigns a texture. We actually don't want that because we've already set a texture on this prefab and there are 2 layers. So let's rectify that error in the enemy script. So let's open the enemy script. Alrighty, so in here, just navigate down to your set random texture function And let's put in there, if this dot name is not equal to diamond boss minion clone in speech marks, and then a couple of curlies, and then just drag the code below it into those brackets. So we're just telling the script that if the enemy is not a minion, then do the code in the brackets, otherwise do nothing. Okay, so let's save this. And now we can drag the diamond boss minion into your prefabs folder to create an original prefab. And delete the minion from the scene. Alrighty, so for testing purposes during this boss phase, click on the Game Manager object in the hierarchy and set the score to something higher than the last wave requirement in the spawner. So my last wave required 30 points to get to the boss, so I'll set my starting score to 50. This will just make the waves pretty much instantly finish and go straight to the boss stage. And run. And just drag a few minions into the hierarchy from your prefabs folder to make sure they move with no errors. Cool. Right, so at this point you could have the minions use any of the abilities that we made so far for the enemies. I'm going to make mine use the random mover ability. So let's get into the enemy script. And all we have to do in our switcher is add the diamond boss minion clone to the free mind case. So now the minions will do what the free minds do. You could also make them shoot if you wanted to. Alright, let's save this. And we'll run it again and drag a few minions in to make sure they're moving freely. Cool. Okay, now we're all set to start working on the boss. This is going to have some new stuff that hasn't been in the beginner series so far. So let's make the C# script and call it boss. And drag it onto the diamond boss. And let's open the script and make a start. Alrighty, so we have a bit to get through on this little puppy, and there is some new stuff. So firstly, let's set up some variables. Well, we will need a rigid body to control its movement and rotation. So let's do private rigid body boss RB. And it's going to need a reference to the enemy bullet to fire and also a reference to the minion to spawn in. So public game object boss bullet, comma boss minion. That's two variables on the same line. And we need variables for speed and rotation. So serialize field, private, float, speed, and spin speed. Now the boss won't constantly move, so we need a variable that we can change to control how long it waits between movements. So serialize field, private, float, boss wait. Now initially for starters, we will just kill the boss with a certain amount of hits. Then later at the end of the game, we will put in a proper boss health system with a health bar display, etc. But for now, let's just use hits. So serialize field, private, int, hits to kill. And we're also going to need a variable to hold the hit count. So public, int, hit count. Just making it public for the time being so we can see it in the inspector for testing. We can always make it private later. And we obviously want to get points for killing it. So serialize field, private, int, award points. And then lastly, we need a link to the Game Manager script at some point. So private, Game Manager script. Alright, that should do it for the variables for now. So in start, let's retrieve the Game Manager script with our all familiar Game Manager script equals game object dot find Game Manager dot get component Game Manager. And let's also retrieve the rigid body with boss RB equals get component rigid body. Alright, so what first? Well, let's get it spinning first. So let's just do boss rb dot add torque spin speed, comma spin speed, comma spin speed, comma force mode dot impulse. And you remember impulse just gives it one short burst of force rather than over time. And since the angular drag is set to 0 on this model, it will just keep spinning. Okay, so I think we'll work on the boss entrance last, so let's just get the movement and attacking set up first. So we're going to get this boss to move to random positions in the scene. So the first thing we need is a function to generate the random location within the boundaries we set. I don't think we'll need an update method in the script, so let's get rid of that. And let's create a function, private vector3 random pos. And in between the curlies, we're going to put in 4 local variables. You would normally put them up in your declarations at the top of the script, but I thought I'd be a little different today. So float y constraint upper equals 4.4f, and then float y constraint lower equals 2.2f, and float x constraint equals 5.7f, and finally float z constraint equals 0. Now, of course, you could put all of these variables on one line separated by commas, but I'm just doing it this way so I can add the rem statements in there for you. So these are the constraints in the scene. The enemy can only move within these numbers. If you've been following along so far, then these numbers should be pretty close, if not the same, but it wouldn't hurt to check these in your editor at some point. Alright, now let's generate the random position points. So let's do a random x position with float random x equals random dot range minus x constraint, comma x constraint. And then a random y position with float random y equals random dot range y constraint lower, comma y constraint upper. And of course z just stays the same, 0. And then finally, let's make this function return the complete whole vector with return new vector 3 random x, comma random y, comma z constraint. Cool. So now each time this function is called, it will return a random full vector to move the boss to. Alright, let's set up our move coroutine to actually move it. So let's do an I enumerator for this one. So I enumerator move to. And in between the curlies, let's get the random position from our new function and store it in a temporary local variable with vector3 destination equals random pos. And now let's move it to that random position with while transform dot position is not equal to destination, and in between those curlies, transform dot position equals vector3 dot move towards transform dot position, comma destination, comma speed times time dot delta time, and then yield return null. Alrighty, so the while loop will keep going until the boss's position matches the destination random position we generated. The movement is something a little different this time. We're using move towards. The move towards basic syntax is 2 vectors, where it starts and where it ends. Then it creates a smooth movement to the destination. Okay, I think at this point we should save this just to make sure we have the rotation and movement. So temporarily, let's just run the coroutine from our start method with start coroutine move to. This will just run it once. So let's save this. And click on the boss in the hierarchy and let's set the speed and spin speed variables. I'm going to do 1 for speed and 0.3 for spin. Okay, and let's run this. Alright, boss is spinning and moving to a random position. And if we run it again, different position. Cool. Okay, let's start working on some special attacks. So let's get back into the boss script. Alrighty, so a little something new in this one as well. So the first boss attack is for the boss to fire a barrage of bullets, but we want them to fan out across the screen, not just go straight down. So we have to handle the rotation of the bullets a little differently this time. Let's do the code first and then explain afterwards. So we'll do a function private void fire fan. And then in between the curlies, we're going to do a for loop. So for int I equals -3, and then I is smaller than 3, and I++. You remember our standard loops from a previous video. And in between those curly brackets, type in int gap equals I times 15. And then instantiate boss bullet, comma, transform dot position, comma, Quaternion dot Euler, and then in brackets gap, comma 90, comma 0. Alrighty, so we're starting this for loop at -3 so that we can spawn in the first bullet on the side of the boss and then fan across to the other side of the boss, and it's going to cycle from -3 to +3, so we'll get 6 bullets. Now the local integer variable gap will be used for the spacing between the bullets. The bigger the multiplier, the bigger the gap. Then we are instantiating the boss bullet at the position of the boss, and we're changing which way the bullet faces so they don't all go straight down, with the bullet at the X rotation of gap and the Y of 90, using Quaternion Euler. Now Quaternions are a rather big subject, and I do plan to do a video on this stuff in the intermediate series. It's rather big. And also, this isn't the only way to do it either. But for now, if you want to read up on it, I've left a link in the description for a pretty good explanation on a website. They can be a royal pain in the butt, so take it slow with them. Further down the track, you'll probably try to avoid them if possible, because they do require Unity to do some quite complex calculations, and they can get very resource hungry. But for this simple game, it's okay. Alright, now up and start to test this first attack. Let's remove the move to coroutine, because we already know that works, and let's do fire fan. And let's save this. And click on the boss in the hierarchy and drag the enemy bullet prefab into the boss bullet object slot that we made in the script. And run. Sweet. Bullets are coming out in a fan pattern. We didn't need to change anything in the bullet script for movement because it already moves the bullet in the direction it's facing. And if we run this again and pause after the boss fires and then click on each bullet, you can see the rotation for each bullet has a difference of 15 as set in our script. Alright, now let's do some more special attacks. So let's get back into the script. Okay, let's do a circular firing attack. We'll do this one in a coroutine so that we can slow it down a little rather than have all the bullets just come out at once. So enumerator fire circular left. And in between the curlies, let's do another for loop. So for int I equals -5, and I is smaller than 10, and I++. And a couple of curlies, and in between those curlies, let's do int gap equals I times 15 again. And then instantiate boss bullet, comma, transform dot position, comma, Quaternion dot Euler, and in brackets gap, comma 90, comma 0 again. And then yield return new, wait for seconds, 0.05 f. Alright, so this one is very similar to the fire fan we created earlier, only this one shoots 15 bullets in a circular motion. The gap multiplier is 15, and again the bullet is instantiated where the boss is rotated accordingly. Then we have a quick pause just to stop all the bullets coming out at once. So this one runs in the left direction, so let's copy this entire routine and paste it underneath. And we'll change this one to fire in the right direction. So change the routine name to fire circular right. And change the loop parameters from -5 to 5 and 10 to -10. And change the smaller than sign to the greater than sign. And finally change I++ to I-. Cool, so now the routine will fire the opposite way. Alright, so let's test at least one of these. So up and start, change fire fan to either fire circular left or fire circular right. And save. And let's run it. Cool, it's doing it. Alright, let's get back in the script and do another one. Okay, well, I guess we should just have a normal shoot attack, i.e. bullets just going straight down. So let's make another I enumerator. I enumerator, fire straight down. And in between the curlies, let's do a for loop again. int I equals -3, and then I is smaller than 3, and I++, and a couple of curlies. And in between those curlies, instantiate boss bullet, comma, new vector 3, transform dot position dot x plus I divided by 2, comma, transform dot position dot y, comma, transform dot position dot z, comma, boss bullet dot transform dot rotation. And then yield return new wait for seconds 0.25f. Okay, so this one will shoot 6 bullets and it will instantiate them at the boss's position, but we've added the value of I to the X position divided by 2. We don't want all the bullets just to come down in the same place in a line, so this just mixes it up a bit. You could even put a random.range statement in there if you want it to be really random. And we don't need to rotate anything this time because the bullet prefab is already facing the right way and it's just going straight down. Alright, let's put this one to the test. So change fire circular left or right to fire straight down. And save. And run. Cool, down they go. Okay, that will do for special attacks for now. Maybe we can do more later in the game series. Let's do the last one, which is to spawn in the little boss minions. So let's get back into the boss script. Alrighty, let's make a function to spawn the minions in with private void spawn minions. And in the curlies, we'll do another for loop. So for int k equals 0, and k is smaller than 3, and then k++, and a couple of curlies. And in those curlies, instantiate boss minion, comma, transform dot position, comma, boss minion dot transform dot rotation. And that's it. The loop cycles 3 times for 3 minions and instantiates them all in the same position of the boss. You could offset each one's position if you wanted to by maybe adding the value of k to the x position of each minion. Maybe we'll do something like that in the tweaking video at the end of the game. And I have no idea why I used k. I probably just should have used I. You can use any letter, they're just variables. Okay, so let's test this last one by taking out fire straight down and just call the spawn minions function in start. And let's save this. And click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy and drag the diamond boss minion prefab into the boss minion slot that we made earlier. And run. And there they go. Okay, well, now that we have our special attacks done, we need to create a coroutine with a switcher to randomly move and attack. So let's get back into the script and do it. Okay, let's get this boss moving and attacking with a coroutine. So let's do I enumerator, move and attack. And in between the curlies, let's do while true. And in those curlies, let's make the boss move by running our other I enumerator. So let's do yield, return, move to. And then before it moves again, let's get it to wait using our wait variable with yield, return, new, wait for seconds, boss wait. And now we can make a switcher to choose a random attack. So we have 5 possible attacks, so let's do int rand attack equals random.range 1,6. And then switch rand attack. And a couple of curly brackets. And now we will do each case to call each function or enumerator. So let's do the first case. So case 1 and a colon. And then fire fan. And then we'll stick a wait in there with yield return new, wait for seconds 1, and a break. Now we can copy this entire case and paste 4 more of them below. And change the case numbers to 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then for each case, we just change what it does. So case 2 will run the enumerator fire circular left. And case 3 will run the enumerator fire circular right. And case 4 will run the enumerator fire straight down. And finally, case 5 will run the functions spawn minions. Okay, so this routine will first move the enemy using our move2 function. Then it will wait for however many seconds we specify in the boss wait variable. Then it will choose a random number between 1 and 5, and whichever number turns up, the script will run the associated case or attack. So let's kick this routine off in start by removing the spawn minions call and typing in start coroutine, move and attack. And one last thing, eventually the game manager is going to need to be able to restart this routine from time to time. So let's make a public function that the game manager can call. So let's do public void restart boss. And then in the curlies, start coroutine, move and attack. Alright, let's save this and get back to the editor. Okay, and now click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy, and we need to set the boss wait time. I'm going to go with 1 second. Okay, we're good to go, so let's run it and see. Alright, boss is moving around and doing random stuff. Alright, let's also make it chance fire when it's actually moving, so just make it a little bit harder. So let's get back into the script. Alrighty, so navigate down to your move2 routine, and we'll add a few lines. So just before the while loop, let's do int j equals 0. Then inside the while loop, after the transform line and before the yield return null, type j equals random.range between 0 and 1,000. And then if j is equal to 250 and a couple of curlies, and inside the curlies, fire fan. So each time the while loop cycles, it's going to choose a random number between 0 and 999. Then if that number happens to be 250, then it will run the function fire fan, so it will shoot. Now 1 chance in 1,000 doesn't sound like much, but with the amount of cycles this loop will do during movement, it will indeed hit 250 quite often. So let's save this and run. So there we go. It can now also, by chance, shoot while it moves. Cool. Alright, well so far the only issue I see currently is that some of the bullets are not destroying themselves when they go off the screen. This is because our enemy bullet script, we only gave it the lower Y boundaries because the bullets were only ever going straight down. But now that the bullets can pretty much go anywhere, we need to set all 4 boundaries. So I'm just going to copy the enemy boundaries to make it simpler. So let's open the enemy bullet script. And now we will just set the other 3 boundaries. So private float destroy boundary y bot for bottom equals minus 4.2f, and destroy boundary y top equals 6.5f, and destroy boundary x equals 7.7f. And now our if statement needs to contain all 4 boundaries. So if transform.y is less than destroy boundary y bot, or transform.position.y is greater than destroy boundary y top, or transform.position.x is greater than destroy boundary x, or transform.position.x is smaller than minus destroy boundary x. And that's it. Now all the bullets, no matter where they go, will destroy themselves off screen. Alright, so let's save this. Okay, so now we need to be able to kill the boss. So let's get back into the boss script and take care of that. So remember, we set a variable for hits to kill earlier because we're just going to use hits to kill it. Later we will put in a proper boss health system with a health bar. So let's do a trigger for this one. So way down in the bottom of your class, let's do private void on trigger enter collider other. And in between the curlies, if other dot compare tag player bullet and speech marks. And then between those curlies, hit count plus plus. And then we'll do another if hit count is equal to hits to kill. And in between those curlies, GameManager script dot wipe enemies and GameManager script dot got point award points, and then destroy other game object and also destroy game object. Then outside those if brackets, else destroy other dot game object. Okay, so this trigger will only run when the boss is hit by a player bullet. We automatically add 1 to hit count. Then if we've hit it enough times to kill it, then wipe all enemies and bullets from the scene, call got point and add the points for the killing it, and then destroy the boss and the player bullet. Or if the boss is still alive, then just destroy the player bullet. Okie dokie, let's save this. And now click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy and set the amount of hits to kill the boss. Just for testing purposes, I'm going to set mine to 2. So I have to hit it twice to kill it. And also set the award points. I'm going to set mine to 500. And now click on the Game Manager object in the hierarchy so we can make sure the score gets updated when we kill the boss. And let's run this. Sweet. Hit it twice and it's destroyed, and we got our points. Alright, so the only thing left to do now is have the boss make an entrance. We can't have it just spawn in, that would be kind of boring. So in the game preview I showed in the first video for this, the boss just slowly came down from the top of the screen. Well, since I'm recreating this game again, let's do something a little different. So we're going to have it pass over the top of the player and then settle at the top somewhere. So click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy and set its Z value to -4. So you'll notice even though we've moved it on the Z axis, the size of the cube doesn't appear bigger or smaller. That's because of our camera. So let's size the cube up to 200. And we will size it back down in script to give it the illusion that it's flying over you. Now move it down to the bottom of the scene so it's just off where you can't see it. I'm going to round my Y value off to -6.2. Alright, let's do some scripting. So let's get back into the boss script. Okay, well, we want the boss to travel into the scene over the player's head and then move its Z position back down to 0. So we're going to need a couple of vector 3 waypoints. So let's do serialized field, vector 3, waypoint 1, comma, waypoint 2. And we will set those waypoints in the inspector afterwards. Alright, so we're going to need a routine for this one. So let's do enumerator, make entrance. And in the curlies, let's use our move towards method again to move to the first waypoint. So while transform.position is not equal to waypoint 1, and then in those curlies, transform dot position equals vector3 dot move towards transform dot position comma waypoint 1 speed times time dot delta time, and then yield return null. Then outside the while loop, i.e. after it's done moving, we will pause for a second with yield return new, wait for seconds 1, and now another while loop to move to its final destination of waypoint 2. So while transform dot position is not equal to waypoint 2, and in those curlies, transform dot position equals vector3 dot move towards transform dot position comma waypoint 2 comma speed times time dot delta time. And we also need to scale the cube down in this one too, so transform dot local scale equals vector3 dot move towards transform dot local scale comma new vector3 100 comma 100 comma 100 comma 50 times time dot delta time, and then yield return null again. And then finally outside that while loop, we will wait another second with yield return new, wait for seconds 1, and then we'll start the boss moving and attacking by starting our move and attack routine with start coroutine, move and attack. Alright, so we've already used move towards in our move to routine, so I won't explain that one again. Just a note on the scaling of the cube. Of course, the X, Y, Z values are going to need to be scaled back down to its original 100, but we want it to get scaled down fully by the time the second movement has finished. Now, there are smarter ways to do this, which I will cover further down the track, but I'm just trying to keep things simple as this is the beginner series. So I just did a little math, and 50 is just about right for the speed so that they both finish around about the same time. So all that's left to do in here is to remove from the start method our move and attack call and replace it with make entrance. So make entrance will now run first, and then when it's done, it will call move and attack. So let's save this. And now click on the diamond boss in the hierarchy, and we need to set the waypoints. Now I've already figured out mine. I'm going to set the first Y value to 2.5, and Z of course has to be -4. And the second waypoint to get to where it needs to be to start attacking and moving will be Y at 3.7 and Z at 0. Now of course if Z stayed at -4, you would never be able to hit it with your bullets. It was set at -4 in the first place so that you can't shoot it while it's making its entrance. Okay, so let's now give this a test. And there it is, coming over the top of the player. And settling down into position. And doing its thing. Cool. Now, maybe later we could make something a little more dramatic, like making the camera shake when it makes an entrance or something like that. But for now, this is good. Well, our boss is pretty much done, so let's drag the diamond boss from the hierarchy into the prefabs folder to create an original prefab. And you can now delete it from the scene. And now click on the spawner in the hierarchy. And if you remember from the last video, we already created a slot for the boss. So let's drag the boss into that slot. And now let's quickly just jump into our spawner script. So you remember in our last video, in our boss spawn function, we remmed out the instantiate line because there was no boss. Well, now we can unrem it. And you can either rem out or delete the debug line if you want to. So now we can save this. Okay, so now we can give it a test. So this should quickly just rip through the waves because we set our player score higher than the last wave requirement. So the boss should just come popping in, so let's give it a go. Boom, there it is, coming in. Okay, now if you allow yourself to get hit by a boss bullet or enemy, you'll notice that your ship doesn't respawn. That's because in the previous video we made an empty slot for what to do when the player gets hit and it's a boss fight. So let's get into our Game Manager script and give it some instructions. Okay, so Game Manager is going to need a link to the boss script to be able to stop its coroutines. So let's do private boss diamond boss. Now, when the scene loads, this script runs. So if we try to retrieve the boss script and start, we're going to get an error because the boss doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been instantiated in. So we will retrieve it only if the boss battle is true. So in our get ready routine and our is boss battle instructions, let's retrieve the boss script. So diamond boss equals game object dot find game object with tag and speech marks boss dot get component boss. And now that we have reference to it, we can stop all the coroutines in the boss with diamond boss dot stop all coroutines. Because of course we don't want the boss carrying on attacking while we're trying to respawn in. And then we'll put in a brief pause with yield return new, wait for seconds 0.5f. Then a placeholder for our yet to come GUI, so debug.log get ready. And then wait for 2 seconds with yield return new, wait for seconds 2. And then instantiate the player back in with instantiate player. And finally, remember we made a function in the boss script to restart it moving and attacking. So now we can call that. Cool, and we're done. So let's save this. And let's give it a test. Let's get hit by a bullet. Cool. After we get hit, the boss stopped attacking and then restarted attacking after we spawned back in. Alright, our boss is done, I think, for now. So I won't do a recap on this one because it was quite a lot. But if you do run into problems or have a question, I am on Discord. Also remember that there are many different ways of doing a lot of stuff we did today. I'm trying to keep the code limited to what we've learned so far with a few kind of subtle differences. But at some stage we will revisit this game and make a lot of the code better and more efficient, etc. So what's next? Well, there's the GUI, so that might be in the next video. And we'll see how long that takes and maybe do the sound or even get into some particle effects. In the meantime, you could set up your game to run properly, i.e. set your starting score back to 0. Set up your waves and next wave scores. Maybe you want 10 waves before the boss comes. I've only done it with 3. Play around with the spawn rate and make them spawn faster with each wave perhaps. And don't forget you have your individual enemy prefabs which you can tweak as well. There's quite a lot of tweaking you can make in lots of different places. And of course at the end of this game series I will have a tweaking video to go through all the things that you can change. But if you're following along, keep a copy of this game for the next video. So I hope to see you in the next phase of this game.